Yeah, I'll check it as
Come
well.
here to save an argument, all I
Drop
think.
that down a bit for you.
Anyway, he's quite a tall man.
He's tall, isn't he? You want to get his lovely face on the mic.
No, you don't want it.
No, he's on it.
Don't want it. You don't want it.
He does.
It's 3:15.
Doesn't want it.
There you go. Perfect.
Doesn't want it.
He doesn't want it.
Can you hear me? I
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
hear myself.
I can.
I got you.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
How close do you want it?
Yeah, it's got to be close. It's closer than you think. Genuine.
Is that, it's the...
The breathe.
Hello? Yeah, I got it.
It's weird.
Right,
That guy's
so what did
creeped
we
me out.
decide that you wanted to be introduced as?
Ollie.
You
This is
want to
Ollie.
Mindset mentor, I'll be. For
Mindset
this.
mentor. Excellent, I can remember that.
just go ex-professional rugby player? Let's just go with that.
No, yeah,
because-
because this episode's about...
Yeah, we need to say what you do
Yeah,
now.
What you do now, exactly.
Living well.
I will say ex-professional player, because that's what your past was, but your
Yeah, but I
present
suppose...
is...
What do you want it from the lead for mental health and wellbeing from the Welsh Rugby Players Association, or do you want
Mush, this is
director
your
of
life,
living
not
well?
mine.
Mate, I live
Yeah, yeah.
5 lives in one.
Nice.
Yeah.
You know?
Director of Living Well with Lloyd
Yeah.
Ashley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a lot to remember.
Mate, if you forget about me, I won't.
Director of...
It makes for comedy in the
Yeah.
podcast, to be fair,
Yeah.
when she
Lloyd
forgets.
Ashley.
So
Huh?
it's
Just
funny.
put director of living well. You don't even need to... You don't need
What
to...
were you again?
Ollie Olds. Mindset mentor.
I'm gonna fucking remember this.
So you got
Ages,
it.
yeah. Right.
2 guesses. That makes 2 guesses harder, doesn't it?
Well,
Rather than 1.
Yeah, I
Remembering
know,
both.
and this is our own fault for having to.
Can one of you
Right.
leave? No, I'm joking.
Heads or tails?
Right, mindset mentor,
Yeah.
ex-professional and director of
Sounds
Sounds
Living Well.
very
It does,
posh. But when
fancy.
one person works for your business, you've got to be director, you know?
Everything.
I'm the CEO.
Yeah.
Okay, have you clapped?
I'm not very good at that.
I haven't actually done that in weeks because I just do it based off of when I press that. It's easier. But
Okay,
go for it.
3:15 now. Aim for 4:15.
What episode are we on? 7?
I actually don't know.
7.
Is it?
Yeah.
Are we sure?
Yep.
Could be not.
When it comes out, could be up to date, but
We'll see.
It's 7.
All right, are we all ready?
Yeah.
It's quite warm in here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Good to go?
When you're ready.
You were just a bit
No, I was
distracted
just,
over there.
I wasn't. I've got the notes
All
on my
right, cool.
phone.
Okay, I'm going now. Welcome back to another episode of Say How It Is, where we are joined by 2 guests today. Ollie, who is a mindset mentor, right?
Good
I got
job.
a lot to remember with 2 guests, guys. And Lloyd Ashley, ex-professional player and director of Living Well with Lloyd Ashley. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
appreciate the invite.
You're very welcome. And so director, and you were just saying that's because you've got one other person, so you have to be the director.
No, there is actually nobody else. So when you're a solo in a business, you can be whatever you want to be, depending on what you're trying to avoid or what you want to do. So yeah, that's the pleasure of that.
How did it all start?
Wow. You said we only got an hour. You only got an hour for this.
Give us a brief overview.
In all honesty, it started not to be sort of a business. I had an idea. I went to do an introduction to counselling course, fell in love with the idea of the fact that we're not speaking to people properly, we're not opening up conversations properly. Then went on to do my mental health first aid, do the instructor's qualification, and at the time I was doing my lecturing qualification.
Wow.
Not doing it
Go
all.
on.
Yeah,
Please, full.
yeah, I was doing this on the side of playing, and all of a sudden I had this idea. I was like, I'm gonna go to my old school and ask them, can I pilot what I want to do? So I went there, piloted a session. It was like a mental health awareness session for young boys, really, is what it came down to, and trying to open up that conversation. They were like, wow, we've never had a conversation like that with these young men before. And then I was like, maybe there's something in there. So I met up with the sports psychologist from the Ospreys, Dr. Steve Mell. I met up with the clinical psychologist from the WRU, Dr. Dale Thomas, and I was like,
Yes, he's
We
got
love
many,
you.
many chats on it. He's been named many times on it.
He's a brilliant guy.
We're waiting to get him in the seat. We're
Yeah.
probably going to be waiting a while.
No, we get him in. Let's get him in. I'll push that as well. And then I went to the WRPA and I was like, I've got this idea that I want to run. I think it needs to come from a player's perspective because there was work going on, but probably not enough uptake is what I wanted. And then I was like, I'm going to run this. And then all of a sudden, school started booking. I was like, I haven't got a business or anything. They were like, how do you charge and stuff? I was like, okay, I need to make this kind of official. So we were on holiday in Spain one year, and I said to everybody, what do you think I should call my company? Like, if I'm going to do it, what do I need to do? And then we all sort of sat around, threw ideas around. And my big thing was around mental health. Everyone speaks about being okay. And I was like, I don't want it to just be okay. I want people to flourish. I want it to be around living well, not just having a business that incorporates, are you okay? Because that wasn't where I wanted to be. So yeah, that was why I went with Living Well with Lloyd Ashley. And the fact I put my name in there, some people say you egotistical little, but I was like, no, I need this
But you're
company.
the director, do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
You can do what you want. You call the shots.
Yeah, until somebody else comes in, they're like, why do you do that? And then I was like, right, I want this company, wherever I go with it, to align to my values. So my name's going to be on everything, because that holds me accountable for everything we do. So yeah, that's pretty much where it come from. Probably some people look at it and think it's really successful because you've been loads of places. My wife, looking at how poor my admin is and stuff like that, will tell me it's really unsuccessful. So it's somewhere in between all those things.
And you did all of this when you were still playing?
Yeah, I set that up when I was still playing. Didn't really know what I wanted to do after rugby. I'd become a qualified plumber. I'd done my leadership and management qualifications, done my foundation degree in sports coaching, done my lecturing qualification through the
Very
time.
well qualified, aren't you?
No, I'm very
Really
well
out.
certificated, not qualified. I'm like got all those level 3s, level 4s, level 5s, and then someone slaps you with a PhD and a master's in front of you, and you're like, yeah, I haven't done anything yet. So yeah, no, it's just those things. And I was like, just give it a go, and then see what happens. And basically, that's what I'm doing now, just giving it a go.
Nice. And Ollie, similar story for you or a little bit different?
Similar to the extent that it was never meant to be a business, it was just a passion. I think that's probably the best way to start a business, to be honest, because you're doing it from a good place. But mine was, what we've all had in common is ACLs.
Oh,
Yes.
that dreaded ACL.
So after my third ACL, I'm probably like...
Sorry, just casually, just 3. Like,
Yeah.
that's not easy
We'll
for
touch
anyone.
on that in a bit
Well,
as well.
yeah, we can touch on it. So after my third knee ACL, I was in Australia, and I realised that, like we talked about earlier, the surgeon was like, you know what, you can't play anymore. And that sense of purpose, sense of identity went. And I was like, well, what am I doing now? And I started, trying to do another trade or doing some construction like most men would do, just get into construction. I was like, this is not fulfilling me at all. But what I tried to do is I started to just do what I love to do, which is exercise. And I started in Australia, there's a place in Brisbane called Kangaroo Point. And every Sunday I would just literally say, like, workout Sunday, see you there. I'm going to just run the stairs and go from there. But then what I started to tap into myself on that journey of trying to find out who I was understanding what my values were again, and who was my identity, and what brings the best out of me. So that was journaling, that was meditation, that was connecting with people. And I loved the sense of connection, because I think we all need connection. And on top of that then was like really wanting to live life, not just coast through life or get by and X, Y, and Z. I was like, I just want to live life to the fullest. And when you go to that extreme, you are going to hit lows, and you are going to find out on the way that what's right and what's wrong. And that's the meaning of purpose, because you only find out your purpose by the things you don't like doing, because that diverts you closer. So essentially on that journey then, I was like, well, yep, I want to get into doing some transformation coaching. Got a mentor in front of me. Started reading books which I never read in school. I started to educate myself, and then got into NLP and things like this. And next thing you know, I was like, wow, I'm really enjoying the factor of, okay, a person's at A and they want to get to B, and the roadblocks are, lack of self-belief, self-worth, of his confidence. Am I actually capable of this? What's the limiting beliefs that stopped you do this? Or, well, I did this before and this held me back. Or a teacher told me this and I couldn't do this now. And there could be many ways. And I realized that the biggest roadblock has always been ourselves. And from that, I was like, okay, this is actually developing me as a person while I'm actually helping someone else develop themselves. Let's turn this. And then it just started to turn into a business. And again, similar to Lloyd, but someone said, how much you charge? I was like, I don't know. I was doing it from a place of love. Yeah. I just loved doing it. And then, okay, hiring people to educate me and creating a business, which I've never had a business before. And that was essentially the journey. But I tried to do it in a quick version, as in telling the story in a quick version. But there was a lot of peaks and troughs in that, and depression and overwhelm, especially when the ACL stuff happened, I was very lost. In Australia, no family, so those things were kicked in, yeah. But what a blessing it's been.
I was going to ask you about what you mentioned about the loss of identity, which could be really interesting for the both of you, because especially for us as well, so that, like, being involved in sport, it becomes your identity. You're so consumed by it, because all you want to do is all you focus on. But especially something like an injury, that then it becomes a reality when you're like,
Throws
wow,
a bit of a
like,
spanner in the works, really, doesn't it?
that gets taken away from you. So everything you're so consumed by, and then that, like, you know, that injury then gives you a reality check. Wow, okay, like that's what I realised in my injuries, that I'd been living life wrong, because I was so rugby, so tunnel visioned. Everything outside was like
You're not
a priority.
It comes back to that, like, living life.
Yeah, so
I think you're like, I'm not going to say before I had these like series of injuries I wasn't living life, but essentially I wasn't, because I was 100% rugby, and I, to the point where I would like completely prioritise that over everything.
Yeah.
And it's because you're surrounded by that as well. Like, your environment plays a big part. If everyone else is doing the same thing, you're going to do it. So all of a sudden, when you take a step back and you're like, right, I've got weekends now, and I've got this and that. What do I want? What is my purpose?
So I was going to ask you, how did you then, like, if you felt, wow, I feel like I've lost my identity. Who am I? How did you find who that person was again?
Oh, how did I find it? Well, by going the opposite way. For the first part was partying, surrounding myself with the wrong people, waking up feeling depressed, not knowing what I was actually doing, going through the motions of life. And then I think for any form of change, it's got to be an emotional change. You've got to hit some form of a low to be able to flip, because a lot of people will just coast just above low, and that's okay. Work Monday to Friday, getting the beers, whatever, on the weekend, do it again. But you hit that low. And the biggest one for me was, I remember it well, was I was these couple of weeks in a row of just partying and whatnot, and I would wake up on a Sunday and I'd walk to the end of my street and there was a church there, and I've never been religious before, and I literally would walk past and I'd hear this church, I'd hear the hymns, and I always had this sense of calling to go check it out, but I was like, nah, and I would just walk straight to the shop, get a pie, go home hungover. And it would have been like a month or two or so of just walking past it. And then I went, you know what? I can't keep feeling this way. What have I got to lose? Just walk in there, sit at the back. So I walked in there, sat at the back, and this pastor was talking, his name Russell Harper. I literally spoke to him yesterday. And I was 25 at that stage. And he spoke, and he wasn't really essentially talking about God. He was talking about life. And it just hit me right in the chest. And I remember at this stage now, I started to cycle, and I was talking about earlier, starting to run, and after overcoming the ACL, I started just getting to triathlon training. And at the end of the service, I had this need to tell him, just thank you. So at the end of the service, they have this cup of tea and they have biscuits and everything there. And I just said, mate, you don't know who I am, but I just want to say what you just said then was amazing. He goes, oh, all right, what's your name? I introduced myself. And he said, what do you do with yourself? And at that stage, I was doing construction. And I was like, oh, I just do a bit of running, swimming and cycling now and then. He goes, oh, cool. I cycle. And he goes, you know what? Next Saturday, come for a ride with me and I'll see you there. And I was like, I've never met this guy. I just met in this moment. He wants to meet me next Saturday, cycle. So I just hopped on a bike with him the following Saturday. And we went for a ride. And this probably connects to what Lloyd does now. We just sat down and had a coffee. And he wasn't trying to put God on me or anything. He was just a good guy. And I went, you know what? I needed that guidance in my life. And then from that, then I believe is a massive thing, whether you're religious or not. And I am Christian, but is having a sense of faith. It doesn't have to be a God. It doesn't have to anything, but a faith knowing that there is something better for me out there. And if I can put my mind to that, and regardless of all the negative things that can come to it, you know, it's just planting that seed at that stage. And for me then, my identity wasn't connected to sports. I am not defined by sports. I'm defined by who I am on a daily basis. And, you know, as I connect with people, how I speak to people, how I serve, how I give to other people, that's how I connect my identity. And that's connecting me now to God. But essentially, it doesn't have to be the same for you. But what I'm trying to say is when I identified literally just sports, every ACL injury I had, my emotions, my life would go a roller coaster. I'd go with them. Breakups, be skint, partying all the time. My exercise, my eating habits would all go. I'd vent, I'd become negative. That's not a healthy way to live. So if we can detach our identity from sports, And but you know what? Regardless of the ACLs, I'm going to turn up every day and try and show love to myself every day. Try and show gratitude to other people, and actually do things for instead just for yourself. Because I think sports, you have to do things to an extent of where you're trying to start next week, or you've got preseason, you've got to get fit. So all you're thinking about all the time is yourself to get fit, to get right. And I just try to change my perspective on how can I help other people. And that brought me so much love. And that's a little bit of it. I know I went on a bit of a tangent.
No, I really loved it. I really enjoyed listening to that. Thank you.
And it's nice to see, Lloyd, like you're sat there nodding. How much of sort of, I guess in a weird way, you're like that guy. You're like the guy that helped Ollie. And I know you might not see it that way, but you provide the vehicle, and you provide the place for people to come and you know, take that first step of, actually, I'm struggling a bit. I need a little bit of guidance. Like me and my boyfriend and my housemate, we came down to one of your things on the beach the other day, and we just loved it. Like it was just, it's one of those things that just gives you energy, and it's just nice to just be able to connect and chat in a group with no pressure. Everyone's just like, oh, I'd met most of the people there before, and everyone can just be honest and open, and you're doing stuff that makes, you know, you're investing in yourself, you're investing time in yourself. Essentially, you are that guy. I hope you know that.
Thank you very much. Like it's probably not how I feel, but I know the conversations I'm involved in, and like what that gives me as well. And like, I might not remember now, but not long after he came back from Oz and he was settling down, and like I was like, mate, come down, let's go and dip, let's go and have a coffee. And he ended up coming for breakfast. We probably spent about 3 or 4 hours like together that morning. And there was a lot, like for you at the time when there was a lot going on and a lot to work out. And I feel like very, like all talks about religion there, blessed. And I'm not religious. Like my dad's really religious, but I'm not. But I feel blessed is in the fact that I probably speak to people now like 3-4 levels down from like where I used to start conversations, and I do still talk surface shit with people. Yeah, I do, and I love a chat with people. But like I'm able to get down to that, and there's people like I have conversations with now who come to me with like actually how they're feeling, and I love that because we've all got stuff going on, and like we talk about athlete identity. I'm really, really fortunate as in the fact of when I come out of professional rugby, I had the option to go and pursue professional rugby again. I had contract offers. I had that offer. So like from an ego point of view, it was probably really easy for me to step away. But I went into a job as a performance lifestyle manager, coach, mentor, whatever you want to call it, within Swansea Uni. And that's what I still do now on the side of living well. And I work with athletes every day. Some of those will have that transition out, and you see it at different ages, and like you realize how hard, how difficult it is for some people, but for other people how easy it is because of the pressure that puts on them. So like, yeah, I'm probably really privileged in the position I sit in. And I said a story earlier to you guys that like at 19, I had an ACL injury. I got told, right, good news is you're on your way to arthritis already. Like, make the most of your career. And at 19, you go in,
oh my God.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, it put perspective into the rest of my career. And I think I enjoyed my career so much more. Like, I'm not saying there was no lows after that. There were definitely lows. There was more injuries. There was about 8 other operations post that. But it was also a time to go, right, however long you're in rugby, enjoy it and like make the most of it. And like doing things like plumbing and stuff always put rugby into perspective for me, because I was like, wow, these people are grafting on this idea. And it isn't like all said he was chasing purpose and meaning. Like you see people, they're very unfulfilled. And I was like, nah, I don't want, that's not for me. And I don't mind grafting, but I'm not happy with being unfulfilled and not having that as well.
What was your initial motivator to go into the lifestyle work that you did? Was it something you almost fell into, or was there a deeper sort of, no, I feel like I need to do this because of this?
Yeah, probably about 200 things, in all honesty, from things you see, things you feel, seeing people around you struggle, not really sure how to deal with it. Like, let's be honest, all of us have been there. We've been in the physio room, you say to somebody, how are you? Yeah, good, you? And I'm like, I know you're not, but I don't know how to ask you and have this conversation with you properly.
But I think also, sorry to jump in on that, but I think it's because, like, this is my personal, like, view on it. Yeah, experience, is that, like, I feel like I just have to turn up and be professional. And like, I'm actually, my front is hard as nails, but inside I'm an emotional little sponge that like, and I'm like, if I break that wall down with you asking me that question, you've lost me for the rest of the day, because I'm like, I won't get that back.
Yeah.
So I think it's that scary barrier to like, you know, you're like, oh, I've got 4 sessions to get through today. If I let that barrier down, how am I going to get back into it? Do you know what I mean?
Do you mind if I ask you though, if for instance you let that barrier down, you'll actually become a better person, a player, better person, because you're becoming more authentically to yourself. So if you become more authentic to yourself and you go, you know what, this is the version of me, and you'll be surprised that many people will actually buy into you more. Like I realized that we have walls up, we have experiences happen to us and we put walls up. But in reality is if you actually, and it's a journey to do that, is to let those walls down. The version of that person on the field is so much more better. That kid at 7 years old, at 8 years old that wanted to play rugby, he didn't give a rat's ass about what the coach felt. She just wanted the ball in her hands, or 10, whatever age you were, and that become the best version of you. And it's a hard dynamic because you are, you know, you're one bad pass away from what does the coach think? Am I going to get dropped? Did I miss a tackle? And you can connect that to it. But I've realised over time is like learning not to give a fuck.
I think the person, like, I think person of a player is massive. I know we mentioned it earlier, but like it is decisions. I think, like you said, like if you put the person first, you're going to get a better player, you're going to get a better athlete. I think individually, like through injury process and in a long one, you're facing more negative emotions than positive. And I feel like you've got to have a sense of control to be like, sometimes it is okay to be emotional. Sometimes I need to make sure I keep a hold of it, you know? But no, it's really interesting because like in a female environment, emotions are normal and they're accepted and they're okay. Like, you know, 9 times out of 10, someone's going to be crying.
Someone sees me crying, like, oh, are you all right? What's up? Do you want to talk? I'm interested in finding out what was your first experiences in those sort of instances, especially, you know, say when you start of both of your careers, what was the talk around mental health? Was it a thing? Was it something that was spoken about?
No, it wasn't spoken around. And in a way, I'm trying to get rid of mental health being talked about now because it's like talking about people and really attaching to people rather than this is a mental health conversation, everybody. So like it is. So it's that honesty as in, I used to sit down with the older boys and they'd sit down and they'd call it the Sappuccino Club at the time, but they would just be like really honest.
Yeah.
But they were like coming towards the end of their career. Some things you'd probably be like, mate, this is maybe a bit too negative to try and get on with your job tomorrow. But other things you'd be like, well, that's good that they speak around. So I do think to a level in certain pockets it was spoken around, but it wasn't definitely like, look, if you are struggling, come to think. I remember like early on in my career, I was like, boys, leave your stuff at the door. This is rugby. And it was like, yeah, that's really easy, isn't it? Like, I've got this going on. I've got these concerns. I've got a divorce going through. Like, it's children's health. It's my health. It's my family's health. Like, you can't leave that stuff at the door.
No.
But then there's also got to be an accountability around performance conversation. So, like, there is definitely a fine line on there. But I do think we should be authentically able to ask somebody, how are you doing? And they'd be like, mate, I'm good for training.
Yeah.
But I've got a bit of stuff going on today. And like that authenticity
just
around
so you know where I'm at.
Yeah.
But like, so I'm here, but just so you know, this is full.
Yeah.
My thoughts on that, and it's not for everyone, but my beliefs on that, right? And I do think the word mental health gets thrown around willy-nilly sometimes, and it makes the actual meaning of, for some people, like legitimate, and what is, you know, you've been on the booze all weekend and you're struggling on a Monday. It's two different dynamics. But, and this probably might, go against Lloyd a little bit, but I'm a big believer in, okay, if you've got stuff going on, get it off your chest, but have a solution to that, to have an action off that. If I said you're a shit tackler and walked off, well, what's the solution to that? Like, what does that do for me? Okay, that's probably a bad dynamic. But if I said, stuff's going on in my life, blah, 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 okay, cool, get it off your chest. But then next? Tomorrow you vent the same thing to me. Tomorrow the day after you vent the same thing to me. And I just think, well, where's the solution to that? Like, we need an action off that, and that's something I do in my work. It's not mental health, and Lloyd can tell me to shut up on that aspect, but if it's business owners, if it's day-to-day lifestyle people, and they want to build confidence, and they want to build these things, well, it's all good and well building confidence, looking in the mirror and say, I love you, you're beautiful, you're amazing, but there's like an action, the results. If I want to feel better, I can't just, I want to feel better. You need to have something that is aligned with what it is you want to do, and the result of that is confidence. The result of that is feeling better.
It's like the people be like, oh, I'd love to lose weight, I feel insecure, I feel fat, but then you go and eat McDonald's on my own. So it's like, well, it's got to be, like, I completely agree with you, there's got to be action. The only way you're going to find a solution is put an action to how you're feeling.
Yeah, and I don't think that is anything like against all, like where I see it from. Not at all. I just think that total authenticity, that space for somebody might not be the place that they feel like they can be completely authentic. But that's why we need to provide a society, places for our best friends, for the people we love, to be completely authentic, or provide people in those areas so they can go and have those conversations. And we have to have actions to work towards things. But an action might be, look, let's delve into this a bit more when you're comfortable delving into it. Like, an action sometimes is taking one step further back again, in a way, and go into a deeper level so we can work out to move forward. So no, I think it completely aligns all, because what are we trying to do? Make people better. Like, as in, like, better versions of themselves. And it's not better by, this looks what a textbook of a perfect person is, so we're going to make you that. It's, I want you to be a better version of yourself. And being a better version of yourself might be actually talking a little bit deeper, taking strides in a way backwards to move forwards. But so no, I think it lines like completely. Awesome. And I think actions are the most important things, but actions for some people are a lot less at certain points than they are. Like, sometimes it's just show up tomorrow, mate, and you've done a class job. Other times it's like, tomorrow you need to get this done.
I think it's really interesting how I think when people struggle with one thing, it can often become pervasive. Do you know what that means? No. Thought you might not. It just essentially, because I just was saying it, I was like, I know I need to translate it. Essentially, it's like when one aspect of your life goes wrong.
Hilarious.
One aspect of your life goes wrong, but then you all of a sudden you spiral it to every part of your life, and it's like, well, my life is shit, and it's like, no, you might have like, say someone's lost their job, and they're like, my life is absolutely in the gutter. I'm like, well, no, because you've got your health, you've got your family, you've got your hobbies, but they're in this negativity lens and bubble that everything gets encapsulated in it, and I think the action thing then becomes really hard, because they're like, well, where do I start? Everything's shit. And I'm like, you've got to, that at some point is how I felt like post ACL op. And I think it's a combination of emotions. You're on like painkillers, and you're just sort of, I was just lying there in my bed thinking, I need to do this, but I can't. I'm just like caught up in this whole negativity cycle. And for me, that first step was getting out of bed and making a coffee and going and sitting outside. And to most people, that's like, it's just part of your day. Like, well done. But for me, it was like, shit, I made it out the room. Okay, that's good. That's step one. And then the more I built that into my routine, I was like, right, okay, like, I'm achieving something here. And I've actually kept that still in my routine now. And I spoke about it on social media the other day, but I was like, no matter what I do in the day now, I'm successful, because I'm like, well, I've ticked that thing off, which I've done for me. And I think the action thing can be so small. Like, just do, and it's the hardest bit. The first bit is the hardest bit, because you're like going from nothing to something, but it gets everything going. It's like when people say, if they're struggling to go to the gym, put your clothes out the night before. And then all you've got to do is get up and put them on. And then even if you only get and put them on and you go back to bed, you've done the first bit. And the next day you might walk out the house. And then the next day you get to the gym and you might go home straight from the gym. But it's steps in the right direction. But it can be so small. And I think people try to go large straight away. They're like, right, okay, well, if I've got to get out of this, I've got to get everything right straight away. But just start like tiny. So
it's like incrementing it. The habit is a small one. Instead of looking at the big goal, you break it down to massively. And it's so true, that is.
Yeah, and people do. I don't know if I'm obviously a believer in goal setting, but I don't think I'm that big of a believer in having this like massive end goal, because I think people get lost in it. Like if people are like, I want to climb Mount Everest, I'm like, all right then, that's massive. That can overwhelm you. Just go for a walk and take 10 steps, take 12 steps, and build it that way. And eventually you'll end up walking Mount Everest if you keep doing that every day. But I think I have an issue with big goals.
Why?
Because, and I don't know if this in a personal sense is my view, because of the injuries I've had, is that I never wanted to be like, I want to return to play in 9 months. I was just like, my goal is to be able to run. And then once I've run, naturally you have another goal set by people. All right, now I'm gonna change direction. And by doing that and taking that pressure off of like, you've got to be back on the field at 9 months. Because I think goals do provide pressure, which to a certain extent is a good thing. But that's why I set small goals, because you get the hit of like, I've achieved it quicker.
But were you like that before though? So pre-injury, were you like as a teenager, like when you did your first ACL, you're like, I need to get to the World Cup, I need to do this, I need to do that.
It's hard,
I need to get a full-time contract.
It's hard because I look back and it's really hard to remember, in all honesty. I've always been very competitive, but I don't think I had that. I probably
be all and end all of like...
Yeah, I think I was more like, I'm going to make this. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get there. But then when you're injured, you kind of have a bit of a perspective where you're like, well, can I just walk first, please? Because, we spoke about it before, quality of life is very important. So I just think, maybe in a couple of years, I'll be like, no, I need big goals again. But for me, it's like acknowledging it's there. Like, I'd quite like to do this. However, let's look at step one. I've absolutely rambled like hell there, but... What have you took over? Because I'm singing my own voice.
No, I think it's. I was hoping Lloyd would chime in on this one, but do you think it's because this is how many surgeries is this one now?
3 in a row, but 4. I did my other ACL.
So your
when I was
confidence
17,
has been knocked.
Yeah.
So the pressure of putting that out there is like, oh, I'm gonna get hurt again. It's gonna affect my confidence, and I'll go down there. So what I'm gonna do instead is just look at one step in front of the other, which is a beautiful way to look at it, but. It all stems back from getting hurt prior to it, right?
Yeah,
I'm speaking from my own experience.
That is really
and
interesting.
Also think about
Is that fair?
the environment
Be careful with the boss man. You.
I think the environment that you're in has a massive impact on that as well. Like if you're in an environment day in day out where you don't feel like that's not benefiting your confidence or maybe knocking it down, that is going to have a toll on you. So I think and that's in life in general. Like if you mentioned like earlier when you said about your experience where you're going out all the time with the wrong people, like the environment you put yourself in has a huge impact on who you end up becoming.
I find confidence really interesting, right? Because you could be extremely confident in one aspect of your life, but not in the other. Yeah. And like for me now, trying to refine myself as a rugby player, my confidence as a rugby player is not amazing because it all comes back down to proof and evidence. The last however many times I've played rugby in the last 18 months, I've been injured. So it's like, well, you're not built for this kind of thing. However, my confidence in other areas of my life is brilliant. Like I'm very self-assured. I can hold conversations. I can ask people questions. I can do all of this. Very confident like that. But I find it really interesting because I think going back to that pervasive thing, a lot of people would be like, I'm not a confident person. Well, actually, you rock up to work every day and you lead these meetings. So you actually are. But you're not confident in some areas.
But then that's interesting because like on confidence, like hence the title, I say it how it is. I'm a pretty savage
Love that.
savage
It makes
girl.
me cry sometimes.
Yes, sorry. I'm not afraid to say it straight because I also expect that in return from people. But then if you ask me to go and ask a random stranger to, I don't know, will you come on the podcast? And I'm like, no, I don't want to. But I have no issue with like on my own terms going to speak to someone and having really difficult conversations about how I feel or whatever. I have no issue with that. But then another aspect, I'm like, and you asked me the other day, go and ask that guy to come on. I was like, no, I don't. We were rock, paper, scissors, and I lost, and I was like, no, I don't want to go do it. So it is really interesting because it is true. Like there are different aspects of confidence, and like you could be confident in one area and then on somewhere else.
And it's like, I'm sure you come across this a lot, both of you, like labeling yourself as something. I've tried to come away from that a lot now. Why are you laughing?
I'm not laughing because Ffion said to me at the start, what are you? What do you want to
No,
introduce us? And I was like, I don't want to be introduced as one thing because what are you? And there's hidden aspects, obviously, in those roles.
Hey, we'll be here till tomorrow with all your bloody qualifications.
Yeah, well, not qualifications. I told you, I got loads of crayon qualifications. Nothing substantial.
But it does. It comes back to like I view myself now as like, what are my values? It doesn't matter if I could start a job completely away from anything I do right now, but I'm still the same person with the same values and I can uphold them in whatever I do. Yeah. And it wasn't until I got injured that I realised that, because if anyone said anything, I'm a professional rugby player. Yeah, well, I am a professional rugby player. But now I'm just like, I actually speak about the podcast and the online coaching work that I do more because I'm just like, the rugby player bit is like, right, I am, but it's not define
So what do
me.
you want to be introduced as then?
Just going
podcast
crap.
host.
Yeah, there you go.
We wasn't
The
allowed to do
GC.
that.
Yeah, we had to change ours.
That's why we're the host.
I did, funny enough, that's actually really interesting, because I did a speech last night. I went back to my old college and did I was part of an awards ceremony, and I had to speak at the end. And the host came up to me to be like, oh, right, going to introduce you. And I was like, okay, what are you going to introduce me as? And he just said, yeah, just rugby player. And I was like,
So much more.
I know, I thought that. I was like, podcast host. So I ended up, I don't know, again, this confidence came from, but at the start I was like, yeah. And I told everyone, yeah, I'm a qualified PE teacher. Because I was like, I'm really proud of that. And that's a big part of my life, my journey, hence, as well, like podcast host. And I think it's really important to, like you said, not be labelled to one thing. Because, again, I know we've spoken about it a lot, but injuries, that, your life can change at literally a click of fingers. You're not a rugby player anymore. So what are you? And I think that the past year has really made me reshape the way I view myself, because I'm I'm not just a rugby player, and I have so much more to offer. But it wasn't until you, like you mentioned, you hit rock bottom and you're like, wow, I've been living life so wrong. And all I cared about was Ffion, the rugby player. But now I've invested time in being Ffion, the
Friend.
podcast, yes, friend, the podcast host, the whatever else that I want to add the strings to my bow. And I think that you just can get so caught up in it.
In terms of purpose, say both of you now, if you meet someone and you think this person's at rock bottom, what do you say? What do you advise on how to find their purpose? How someone's come to you and they're like, I literally don't know where to turn. This is I feel like I'm at my rock bottom. What's their way out?
A lot of the time, I ask the question why did you come see me? And just listen.
That's when they go, I don't know.
Just listen. yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna go and pick Ollie. Where's Ollie?
I'm joking.
No, but it is a person's come to you for a reason. A lot of the time, we've probably 90% worked it out by the time we go and see that person. So I ask the person genuinely, and I say me and Ollie use a lot of the same words and phrases because we mean it and how we feel it. But thank you for coming to see me. Why did you come and see me? And a lot of the time it's because of this, and this. And I said, okay, and I get that. So, but you're telling me it could be on thoughts of suicide. I'm having these thoughts of suicide. I don't see the point anymore. And then you're sort of going, but you showed up. What's giving you that? And a lot of the time they can work it out. I don't think we can go to anybody and say, this is your purpose.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time just sitting back and listening to people. If you went around the streets and said to people, when's the last time somebody give you a space to just speak? And they just sat back and just listened to you. No barriers, no walls. And then everyone would go, I don't remember. If we went around this, what you girl said earlier, this is, you leave here with energy because you sit back, you listen to people.
Connection.
You get connection. You get to share what you want to say. So that gives you purpose. It questions some things for you, and which is invigorates us at times. So for me, it's just, giving somebody that space, and if they've come to you, they've already got a purpose in some, even if they haven't worked it out before they've come to you, because they've carried on fighting for a reason.
Yeah.
So just giving that space and letting people navigate, but with the point of view of asking the right questions and being there and just listening, not jumping in when someone's pondering. A lot of people in the world don't like silence. I'm comfortable in that silence, sitting there a little bit, let somebody go, because then next thing you know, somebody looks up and goes, "Oh," goes a little bit further, and you're there's more to it, and I'm here to listen to it, so say it. Yeah,
I think Lloyd's bang on. Then I think Lloyd's with the people I work with, they're not on the area of I'm depressed, I'm suicidal. The people I more work with would be more you know what, I'm in a career right now, I'm burnt out, it's affecting my family life, I've stopped exercising and I'm feeling lost. And you're like, right, okay. And then you're kind of going, well, you're asking the questions that kind of prod them to understand and go, where do you want to get to? What does he want? I want to just feel like the old me again. I want to get back to thriving at work. I want to get back to training more. Or is something, you know, I worry about what people think about me now. That's affecting my confidence. Okay, cool. So then you're actually letting them, like you just said, so they're kind of giving you their answers right now.
Yeah.
So that's okay, cool. So ideally, you know, if we were to create an idea, like it was called a Pleasure Island and Pain Island, you're currently on Pain Island, you want to get to Pleasure Island. What does Pleasure Island look like to you?
Yeah.
I want to be able to work, you know, under 40 hours a week. I want to be able to go on a holiday once a year with my family. I want to be present with my family. I feel like I'm on my phone more than ever. Right, okay, so these are the things you want to get to. All right, cool. All right, well, what's stopping you doing that? You know, and if they say, you know, it's just I stress out too much. I sabotage myself. Okay, we can see what's going on. Yeah, okay, well, let's delve into that more. And it all depends. Like I'm very lucky that rugby is very transferable into life, business, you know, mindset, habits, setting yourself up for success is routine. Structure creates freedom. Like, I don't care what anyone says, structure creates freedom in your life, and it gives you a sense of, right, we're going in the right direction. You know, I've had rugby players come to me, you know, I'm on my last year of my contract, I've just come out of an injury, the coach is not giving me the opportunities I usually have, it's affecting my training, and I'm looking at my shoulder all the time. Right, okay, where do you want to get to? I want to feel secure, I want to get a contract sorted for next year. You know, I want to starting more often. I want to get international opportunities again. Okay, cool. So what's going to help you do that? I need to get back to the old me. So it's not anyone else's thing. It's actually working back on yourself. Okay, well, you know, you just said earlier about looking at that end goal. Well, we can put the end goal out there.
Yeah.
But what we'll do right now to build that confidence up is, okay, well, I drop one ball on the field. The next thing you know, I'm dropping 3 or 4 and I'm worrying about the ball coming to me. I don't even want to touch the ball. I've lost my confidence. All right, okay, well, let's get on the paddock. What's going to put you in positions where you can get comfortable catching the ball first on your own? And then you build in momentum. And then when you build that momentum of confidence, that person's like that kid again, loving life again. But it all comes back to us. So if we can develop ourselves, I think it grows. So I find if someone comes to me lost, it's more about they're not lost. They just need a bit more clarity, and
they haven't got a map.
Yeah, they want to map out the vision, and the map that we get told with sports when we're a kid is it's straight line, and you're going to achieve it if you stay in this straight line. Well, unfortunately, guys, the reality is this map goes sideways, it goes backwards. You question mark it through
go
things, and then you go around the roundabout a couple of times. Then you keep going, then you get there, but then you reflect on it and you go, you know what? I needed to go through all of those things to get there because I needed to build those characters in myself and resilience to get there. And we that's the shit that we have to go through.
Yeah. A big thing there is like the skill of listening. And I think it's a very underused skill and very undertrained skill these days, because I think people think that we have, like an example of this is when you go out for drinks with people. It's like you chat nonsense and no one's listening. Everyone's like, you have a few drinks and then you're like, just chatting away and you're saying surface level stuff. No one's really listening to what the other person's saying, and it's just like, we're socializing, we're having a great time, but no, it's not. And then I think a lot of people get lost in that, like, you think you've got social connections but you haven't, because you can't listen and the people you're speaking to can't listen.
Do you think that sorry to pause, but I think women, and I might be stereotyping, I think women are great.
Go for it, let's go on. Come on.
I think women are great from my perspective of sharing and supporting each other. I think for men, having a beer is like, I can get this off. No one's going to judge me, right? Because they're probably a bit pissed right now and I can say whatever I want. And Lloyd, you might have experienced people coming to you more when they've had a beer. I've definitely had people come to me on the drink and I'm like, brother, let's talk on Monday. Let's talk on Tuesday. You know, like...
Well, we had Simon Clark on, founder of Speakeasy, and he said that, like, and he was at his lowest with his mental health. Like, he literally met his dad, didn't he? He met his dad? Mm-hmm. Yeah, met his dad, and they went and had a pint. And that's how it opened the floodgates, you know? And he said that's one thing he goes and does now, meets someone, goes have a pint. And that kind of, again, I think calms the nerves. Yeah. But I think, with women, you don't have to ask us much. We're like word vomiting it out. Yeah. Like, you're right, I
still think listening is a skill and it can be improved though, because you can. The only way that you can give advice or be there and give a space to someone is if you actually sit and listen. And I've been so guilty of it for a long time, where I'm like a fixer and I want to have solutions for everything. And if someone says to me, I'm like, all right, okay, cool, so we're going to do this, and sometimes that's not necessary. You just need to sit there and just be like, I hear you, like, okay, let's sit on this for a bit. And that's something that I'm trying to work on.
But how many times have you actually maybe like unloaded to someone and maybe not had the response of, like you're saying, listening, like you've unloaded to someone and then you've gone a bit, ooh.
The next time you don't want to say it.
Yeah.
So it's
like
really
that
important.
rejection of like, if that's been shut down, or you haven't had the response you thought you'd get from opening up, then again, that's why listening is so important, because you could literally prevent that person from making that decision again.
One thing, we touched a little bit of the differences in like men and women there. I want to ask you both, like, what do you think is the definition of masculinity these days? It's a big question.
It's a big question.
But I think, you know, if you asked 100 people on the street what is masculinity, I think the answers would vary a lot. But if you asked maybe 10 years ago, people would just be like, tough, hard-facing, etc. What do you think that is today?
For me, somebody who's willing to protect in the good and the bad. And by that might mean standing next to somebody and listening. That might mean there's something coming towards somebody and you're willing to put yourself in front of it physically. It looks different in every scenario, but it means like I'm willing to protect what is important to me. And I just think what's changed is it's not just physical protection. And that's the biggest thing for me. It's still protection, I feel, from masculinity. And that's protecting yourself as well. And sometimes to protect yourself, like I said earlier, you've got to go 2 steps back and be vulnerable and be completely honest about what you're going on, because we used to think protect was shut up and get on with it. Yeah. That's not protect, because you're not protecting the people around you, because you're giving them a worse version of you every day, because you're not willing to work on yourself. So protection looks different, but I still think it is protect those people around you. I just think it's not just a physical protection now like it used to be. Yeah,
that's really interesting.
I think masculinity is a tough one, because define it and how do you explain it, but I think it is just being yourself, like not trying to the stereotypical version of masculinity, like you said, just get on with it, have a teaspoon of cement. But actually, like, my biggest growth has always been in a vulnerable place. I don't get growth in a tough, egotistical place. I've always think it's in a vulnerable place. And that's not being soft, that's actually being you. Having hard conversations, honest conversations. But I think it comes, be willing to stand up for what you believe in. So I think that's masculinity to me. And I think that's where your growth comes for me anyway.
Do you think that that's difficult in environments such as rugby, for example, where I think, the work that both of you guys do is massive in breaking down those barriers. But I still think, like, I find it hard that even in our women's rugby environment, like, when you're on the field, you've got to be hard as nails. And sometimes it can be hard to separate that pitch version of yourself to like the off-field version. And sometimes I do get caught up in that, because like what you mentioned earlier about having those walls up, it's like, well, if I break these down now when I see someone before training, how am I going to switch it back on in training? And I think it's almost become, in some instances, like you change your personality, because you're like, well, I'm just, I've got to be on it when I hit the training field. So it's just easier to keep it on all the time rather than flick back and forth between the two.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest thing is people have got to have space to be that. But if people haven't worked out what they are, like, you're never going to get that honest, authentic version of yourself. Like, always talking about going to lows. It's really funny when we're sport, because every team says we learned the most from our losses. Every team says it. But then,
we're on a journey.
Yeah, but then it's like, well, why can't the person, the individual, learn from that? As in, when they've been set back, when they've hit back, why are they not allowed to be vulnerable and learn from that? So I do think there's a lot more spaces now being made available for people. I do think that is the case. And but it is a process, it is a journey, because everything, like I was talking about his journey earlier, loads of those different things give him perspective. So like how is somebody just coming into the squad as a really young person gonna understand who they are, understand what they want to perceive themselves as? Like you're gonna just try and fit in. And that's why, like when I'm working with young athletes, I always say to them, like, what does the best version of you look like? But why is that the best version of you? Because everybody can tell you, well, this is what I want to be, this is. And I say, why? And then a lot of the time I haven't worked out the why. So I think it's always going back. But I do think, like you said earlier, Gwen, you might not want to be that vulnerable person because that's not your space to be vulnerable because you don't want to be it. But then it's like having a support system around you. So you can go to that support system and go, like, that's why... Like I know like how all works at times. When you go down the beach, you're giving somebody a different space to be completely vulnerable and completely honest. Whereas sometimes that face-to-face formal conversation, you're like, we might not get anywhere today from that. So like picking those spaces and those environments are really important, and that's why it can't be in sport like it used to be one size fits all.
No,
because there is 50 different personalities that have got 50 sets of different experiences to get to that one point where they're at. There's a range of ages in there. There's different time lengths on contracts. There's selection every Tuesday. I used to be hiding under the table every Tuesday because I knew as part of Bin Juice you were likely to be having that conversation where it's like, not today, boy, not today. But yeah, so like it is. So there's so many different experiences, but that's why it always has to go back to being person centered, and it's not easy. But that's why you need to provide a big team of people to be able to know when the right time to go speak out those conversations, create a different space. Just say, mate, I've noticed this. I just wanted to remind you, I'm here. Actually, I needed that today. And then it might be like, not today, mate, but can you, like, I might come and speak to you at the end of the week. Is that okay? Because that's my time that I feel like I can be comfortable and have that conversation.
Do you mind if I share a story?
No.
It's not as
Go for it.
it's something about Lloyd said perspective, and this was one of the things that shifted my perspective. So when I was in Australia after the third knee reconstruction, I started doing construction, roofs, asbestos, removing all of it, and we got an opportunity to go work in this little island called Nauru, which is a little asylum seeker island, which is just to the right of Papua New Guinea. And they said, look, you can go there for 10 days, remove this power plant roofs, and come back. And I was like in a real bad headspace, and I was like, you know what, I need to get out of Australia. Yeah, I'll go do it. So when we were there, we were removing these roof sheets, and there was a couple of us, some Aussies there, and we had the local Nauru people originally come help us labour. If they want to do, they could come work with us. We pass the roof sheets down to them. Well, anyway, they'd rock up late, leave really early, and they'd never want to come back. So they got to the stage with no one on that little island. You could drive it in 30 minutes. No one on the island wanted to work. But in the middle of the island was this porta cabins where all the asylum seekers were. And they offered it to them. So anyway, this one guy called Saji come down the porta cabin. He come work with us one morning. And he was from Bangladesh. And he was there and he was smiling. He was really happy. And I was like, right, Saj, you're going to come work with me now. So every day we was waiting to go. I passed the roof sheets down to him, and so-and-so that would happen. And he'd be like, Ollie, do you want a cup of tea? Do you want a water? And he'd offer all the boys. And I was like, wow, this guy is extremely happy to be living in a porta cabin in the middle of the island. And I was curious about him, wanted to know. And the state that I was in that stage, I was victim mentality at that stage. So anyway, as the days went on, we had this really bad tropical storm come through. And I said, right, get back to my hotel and I'll give you some clothes. Because I realised every day he was wearing the same clothes every day. And I asked him, he goes, yeah, I take these home, hand wash them, put them on the line and wear them tomorrow. And I was like, right, I have my clothes. And the next day I said, Sad, you're going to have to tell me how you're here. And he goes, I'll tell you tomorrow. So as I was walking into the site, he was sitting there with his legs crossed and he had his eyes closed. And I was like, what's he doing? And I just like looked at him and just minded my business. I'm like, Saj, right, spill the beans. What were you doing out there earlier? And he's like, oh, I was meditating. And I said, what's that about? And he was like, well, I can't worry about my past and I can't worry about my future, but I can just be where my feet are. And I was like, right, okay. And he goes, obviously I've been here for 4 years, so I want to be content where I am. And I was like, wow, that's a really profound thing. At that stage of my life, I didn't know what it was. So I said, right, mate, come on, spill the beans, what are you here? And he goes, right, so I was in Bangladesh with my family, and we had these people come through the village and shot up the village. And they shot his mum and dad. And they pointed the gun to him and they said, you either leave or we're going to shoot you too. And his wife was in the village still. So he ran away, jumped on this boat, and he was going to Melbourne, Australia. And as he was going to Melbourne, Australia, the offshore police detoured and took it to Bangladesh, took it to Nauru. So there I am hearing this story, bawling my eyes out. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what, like, I really think I've got problems. I really think I got legitimate why me problems. And this guy's just seen his mum and dad get shot, and he's smiling every day, happy, offering tea, offering coffee, and he was only getting $1 an hour, you know, to do this. And I'm going, I said at that stage, like, maybe I needed to hear this. I definitely needed to hear that stage. And then I went back to Australia after that, and I have my moments today still of, you know, why me? I'd be lying if I didn't, but I needed that more than ever. And that thing shifted my perspective so much that I've told this story right now, and it happened over 5 years ago. So yeah, the word perspective and that Saji story is a game changer for me. And I always try and bring myself back to that whenever I feel that come up in me.
That's perspective is one of my favourite words in the whole. I got it tattooed.
You got it on your arm.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
But it is because you do get caught up in your day to day, and it's easy to. And I'm not gonna lie. Your injury was helpful in terms of perspective for me, and I know that sounds sad in a way, but like it was always like everyone's got something to complain about. Everyone's got shit going on, like, and that's that. But it's not until you see someone else's shit that you realise your shit isn't so bad. And there's all, you know, we are in a fortunate enough position that there's always going to be someone who's having a worse time than you are. Yeah. And sorry that you were that person, by the way.
It's all right. It's
but
what it is.
It's like, it's easy to compare yourself to the people who are doing really well. But, you know, if you compare yourself to someone who's not doing well, all of a sudden it does put that into perspective.
But I think you're entitled to, like, how I try to view this scenario. So, like, I've used the injury, for example. Like, there was someone injured for like 6 weeks complaining, I can't be asked to run and where I was like, could barely walk, and I was like, I was still 6 months not walking, and I was like, I'd love to be able to run, to be completely honest. And yes, perspective, but then I tried to, like, I stepped back from it to think, okay, this is this person's probably maybe first experience having an injury or something. Like, we talk about it in our previous episodes about, like, maybe someone's first experience to trauma or something negative. Like, if I got so caught up and got so pissed off at this person being, exactly perspective of like, well, I'm going through something worse than they are, cheek that they've got to complain about it. But you live your own life, and I'm like, you get so caught up and being so pissed off about how everyone else thinks. But I'm like, if you flip it to them, if that's their first experience of something traumatic or difficult, like, they're going to be dealing with it. They're going to be dealing with it probably worse off than you are. Like, I think it all comes down to life experience and how maybe emotionally, like the emotional intelligence experience that you may or may not have. But, like, I think that's the only way I've learned to deal with other people's
naivety, I guess.
Yeah, yes, maybe. But because I'm like, everyone's entitled to have their own feelings and emotions because it's all based on experience. Yeah. And, like, I could waste so much energy on, that person rolling my eyes. How chic of it. But I'm like, maybe that's just their first experience to it, you know? And I'm like, do you know what? Sorry that you're going through it. How can I help you to get through it? Going to provide some motivational, solution-based advice, but also, this is the line, and I'm going to stay over here because also, yes, I'm going through something quite tough, but again, I might be dealing with it a lot better than you are when your problem might be a lot smaller. Yeah. Even though to them it might be so much bigger, you know?
I find in the, like, helping someone else to help you thing really interesting, because I think I do it a lot. Like, if I like to read and podcast and this and that and the other, and if something resonates with me and I'm like, I actually think I need to work on that, I'll like almost subconsciously find someone who I also think needs to work on that, and I'll just be like chatting with them and being like, do you think, like, you know, if you could try this or this and this, and I'm like, I am giving them the advice I need to hear, but by telling them and seeing their reaction, and then it almost feeds back into me. And I actually think it's a really big thing, is being able to speak to people and offer advice or solutions, but actually you're helping yourself by doing that.
I think we all feel, long where this conversation has gone, I think we all feel some sort of satisfaction from helping others. That's why we're doing this episode, because like we've all got our own very different experiences of why we enjoy doing that and why we enjoy helping somebody else. And I think it all comes back, I think you mentioned it, about like what your why is, and I think that's what drives you. Like I said, I said earlier, I spoke in an event last night, and how I ended my speech was I literally said my last piece of advice to someone is always remember what your why is and never lose sight of that, because that's what's going to get you out of bed in the morning. That's what's going to get you through the really tough days. And I think like we've all got our reasons why as to why we want to help someone, and I think it's just really, really powerful.
100%.
Yeah. For me, it's like getting rid of help.
Yeah.
I'm there to support.
Support
like,
is a good
and
one.
like,
Yeah.
I always say to people, I don't want anybody just to come when you need help.
Yeah.
I want it to come when you're like, it'd be nice to have a little bit of support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then,
Little nudge.
because that's
Massively.
the space where we can actually like really develop, grow.
Yeah.
Do you want me to have these or not?
Sorry.
And then, but like, why? And I think at the moment, why we see so many people in crisis is because it's like, I don't need help yet.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
They wait too late.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, okay, well, there's people in the world who want to support you, not just get to that time where they need to help you.
Yeah.
They just want to be with you and be arm around. So like, that's a big one for me.
And I think it's like encouraging and like normalizing. It's so okay to go and get that support.
Yeah.
Like we all try to think we're hard as nails and be like, yeah, nah, so I'm all right for now. But okay, you're all right for now. But if you got that support that little bit sooner, what greater could you be? Like how much greater could you be than rather than leaving it go and then you're at a place where it's so hard to get out of. And I know that's easier said than done, but like that is one thing I suppose the work you're both doing is to try and really normalise that feeling, individual feeling of being like, yeah, I'm here for you.
Here for you.
Yeah.
Do you think
You said at the same time?
Yeah. Do you think though that we like Lloyd does the dips on Friday, I do a run club on a Thursday. Like it's a sense of serving as well. I don't care what anyone says. It's a sense of serving as a part of life. Like your why should be something about giving back.
Yeah.
And you know, if there was no coaches, there'd be no players. There's a sense of purpose of giving back. A coach. So one day you're going to be older and retired, and you might want to go become a coach, and that's a sense of serving. You might see that, like Lloyd just said, remove the word help, mentor, grow someone, develop someone, see someone reach the fruits of their potential and actually achieve something. That is one of the most rewarding things you can ever do. And I think that's the real meaning of life, is serving.
I listened to a podcast, shock, the other day where they were saying about like that's the reason that in the World Wars parents would send their children to the countryside. They could have gone to the countryside too, but they chose to stay and serve because that's how they felt inclined and to have a purpose in doing that. And I think we do lose that now because we live a life of luxury. So it's like you haven't, like a lot of people don't have that like I want to serve, because the whole world has been sort of built to how can I make my life as ideal and perfect as possible and as stress-free and not overcome these hard things. But, you know, one thing, like doing hard things builds you and it allows you to be able to do other things. And, you know, what's the thing that Pratt always says? Hard choices, easy life. Like make hard choices, put yourself through hard stuff, choose to give back to people and don't just be selfish, like there's a time and a place for being selfish, but be selfless and give back. And you know, we all have people that are our mentors, and it's like almost your duty to then be the mentor. It's like the chain of passing down stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Should we do the question?
Yeah, so we have a closing tradition on the podcast where the previous guest leaves the next guest a question, but they don't know who they're leaving it for.
Definitely didn't steal it from Diary of a CEO either.
Stop saying that.
No, because
we are
I
our
will
own
say
people.
anyone who I think might have listened to Diary of a CEO,
No,
I have to say
I'm
it.
going to have to shut her up
I'm
because
new to
we're
this
exactly,
podcast. Is there another podcast? Diary of a
ignore
CEO,
it.
right?
Never heard of it.
Yeah.
We're independent
Have a
women.
look for that.
We do our own thing.
Look for that.
But he doesn't have a bloody scrapbook, does he? So
Or
there we are.
Polaroid photos
Anyway.
or a big sign.
The question for both of you is two parts. What has been the biggest barrier?
Yeah, you can.
What has been the biggest barrier that you've overcome? And part two, how did you overcome it?
Yeah, for me, probably like seeing my dad at rock bottom, probably the biggest barrier I overcome. How did I overcome it? Piss poor. Like, in all honesty, a lot of trying to find space, find what was right, self-sabotage at times. Fortunately, probably like all of us, at some points when we've had lows, rugby kept me on track. Very fortunate from that point of view, and the people who I'm best friends with now are my best mates at that time. So that done something around keep me grounded. My who's my wife now, been married for 9 years, going on 10 years. Like, she was my girlfriend at the time. So like, the consistent people have always been there for me. So they helped me definitely get through those barriers, and probably having something like rugby that fulfilled me so much and was happening to go well, even when I was on the self-sabotage trail. That probably is the thing that kept me going, kept me moving forward. And yeah, very fortunate to have those people around, like my mum and my sister, who like still obviously love to bits now, but like those people around. So yeah, they were the things that helped me overcome those barriers. In all honesty, I can't take too much self-credit from that point.
I like that, man. For me, definitely the accumulation of ACLs, and just the whole, I felt like I was in such a depressive state, even down to like suicidal thoughts at that stage in my life. That was a really hard place. And I think what Lloyd just touched on was having good people around you. I probably pushed people away at that stage in Australia. I didn't have family essentially there, so the coping mechanisms wasn't right there. That was one, and getting out of that place, and yeah, the journey I've been on since then. It's made me who I am today and why I do what I do. And the other one was probably my dad, and this is where Lloyd will touch on when I come back. Last year when I was up in Manchester playing, I'd come back. Dad, well, he's a recovered alcoholic now, or recovering alcoholic, and he had, what was it? In last August, he had 2 cardiac arrests in hospital, and he wasn't meant to come through. So probably seeing that journey and our relationship over the time probably shifted a lot. And then to see him now as this person who's just full of life. He goes, he doesn't drink a drop, loving to my mum, present with our family. So very grateful for that.
Thank you for sharing that.
I nearly went then, everyone. Thank you so much, both of you, for being so open and honest, vulnerable, and sharing your stories with us. Like, it's been such an incredible conversation, and I feel like we've all connected on a much deeper level. Both doing incredible work, like, to really support, not help, but support so many people. And I just think you're making such a difference, and yeah, really, really respect the work you're doing.
Yeah, and I think your openness and vulnerability is so important for other people to feel like they can do that with you, because if you don't have someone, you're not going to give back to someone that they aren't giving to you already. So for you to be able to open that space for people is massive, and I hope you both appreciate and understand the effects. I know it's hard to take credit sometimes, but the impact and the effect that you are having on individuals is massive. So thank you.
Paving the way for change.
Thank you.
I like that, Fee.
Thank you.
Yeah. There we are. Do you want to do your little thing to finish? It's me, isn't it?
Yes.
And remember, it's been a while.
To keep saying it how it is.
Nice, guys. Good job.
Oh, that was so good.
Thanks, brother.
That was